Aloha and welcome back to Wanderous. I am your host, Andrew Crusoe, and today I have a wild story for you. I met a real goddess, at least I think that's what happened to me. Now, after I recorded this episode, I realized that I didn't really provide enough context, so I want to give a little more context of who this goddess is. And not just the story of how I met her, which is in this episode, but who Kali is. The name of this goddess is Kali, a very old goddess in India. Now, I didn't grow up Hindu. I didn't know very much about Hinduism at all before I got to India. But before we dive into the story of this crazy meeting with Kali, I want to give you a little more context. You see, Kali is known as the Great Mother. She comes in, she destroys what's no longer serving you, whatever's keeping you stuck, whatever you're kind of clinging to. She goes in pretty aggressively. She doesn't really give a warning. And apparently she's, from my research, she's the same energy as Shiva. You might have heard of Shiva, who is the great dissolver. And both of these personalities, both of these gods, are a renewal element in Hinduism. At least that's what I've come to understand. Again, I'm not an expert on Hinduism. I'm a student. I'm a lifelong student of many things. And boy, did I learn a lot being in India. Boy, was I changed. That's why I'm really excited for this next phase of Wanderous that you're going to hear, because there were a lot of things that happened in India. There were a lot of growth experiences in India that I'm going to share on this show going forward. And I'm really excited about it. Kali kind of feels like the right energy for 2026, not to make this too timely, but we are really in a phase of letting go of things that no longer serve us, at least I am, and letting the past go and stepping into the person that we're meant to be. That is what is coming up for many, many people right now. These themes of renewal, these themes of rebirth are very much in the air. Can you feel that? I'd really like to hear what you think. If you ever comment or leave feedback on this show, I want to hear about that especially. I really love seeing your comments, by the way. Even if it's just a couple words, it really means a lot to me to know that this is reaching people. So thank you if you've already left a comment. I appreciate it. Or a review, even better, a review. So that's the backstory a bit for Kali, is she's really coming in and destroying what's no longer serving you. And for me, she was kind of initiation for me into India itself, because Kolkata, where I met her, where the story happens today, Kolkata was my first city in India. People who listen to the show, you might remember that I flew directly from Kathmandu down to Kolkata. I landed. I felt like Kolkata wasn't really prepared for foreigners because I couldn't find an ATM and I couldn't get a SIM card in the airport. That's another story that I talk about. I think it was 3 episodes ago. But today we're going to talk about meeting Kali, the Great Mother. Come along with me. Now, I had been in India for only 2 weeks at this point, about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks perhaps. This takes us to January of 2023, which had an interesting energy to it, in my opinion. And I was still adjusting in a big way, which is normal, adjusting in a big way to India and how intense it can be and how different it can feel. I was in the northeast corner of the country in a state called West Bengal, which is a bit confusing because it's on the east side of the country, but there's a whole historical reason for that. And the capital of West Bengal is Kolkata, which used to be called Calcutta, but they call it Kolkata now. And I was kind of in the middle of waiting for my computer to be fixed. My computer just died. The minute I landed in India, the power button wouldn't do anything. So I took it to this local guru. I could call him a guru. He was a tech guru, not the normal kind of guru. He didn't tell me how to live my life or give me advice on spiritual matters, But he was really good. And I was waiting, at least I thought he'd be very good. And I had been waiting for over a week. So while I was waiting for him to order new parts for my computer, I explored Kolkata, which is a very rich city. And one of the places I went to was the Kali Dakshineswar Temple, which is right on the banks of the Hooghly River. The Hooghly River is a very important holy river that goes right down the middle of Kolkata and empties out into the Indian Ocean if you follow it all the way down. But Kolkata is, I don't know, like a 2-hour drive from the ocean, which is too bad. Some beaches would have been nice for me to hang out at. But now, not near the ocean, Kolkata, but plenty of temples there. So I decided to take a day, and I had been couch surfing, which is a whole... If you want to hear about couch surfing and the details of that, you can listen to past episodes of this show. I had been couch surfing with a very cool and generous family, and I was staying on the 3rd floor, and they were giving me all this food. It was just amazing. And not that it was luxurious, don't get me wrong, although kind of, but they, India is very different. You have to be careful what you drink. You want to make sure you're drinking bottled water. You want to make sure it's not a knockoff brand, because there are knockoff brands. Don't drink Billari. Drink Bisleri. I think that's the right one. Anyway, ask your Indian friend. Don't drink knockoff water, because it exists. However, a lot of families will have a reverse osmosis system. They call it RO. They just abbreviate a lot of things in India too. And if they have a good reverse osmosis machine, then you're good. Like I never got sick from an RO machine because it filters everything and does all this stuff to the tap water. You definitely don't want to drink tap water in India. You will die, but you won't die. Maybe if you do it for a long time, but you will get very sick. So I took this time one afternoon to take the bus, which was an adventure in and of itself. Actually, the roughest bus ride I've ever been on, to the Dakshineswar Temple. And one of the cool things about Kolkata is you can use Google Maps and it will tell you what bus to take. They also have Uber. Uber's really cheap, but I was like, well, the bus is going right there. I'll just take the bus. What I didn't realize was that when I got on the bus drivers drive like crazy people, in my opinion. And we were going very fast. We'd hit a pothole. I swear to God, I almost gave myself a bruise just sitting in the wrong place on the bus. This was the only time this happened, but we hit a pothole and we dropped like a foot. I feel like we dropped like a half meter. I couldn't believe what was happening this bus. Just racketing and ratcheting and rattling all around. It was nuts. But I made it in one piece to the temple. And there was a large bus station there with an overpass, so the highway kind of going over it. And there was a market under the highway itself. And there was this funny, I don't know if it was part of a metro station, but there was actually an escalator you had to go up, and then you go across. I think it was a different overpass, to get over another part of the road. And you go down, and then oh wow, the power just went off. Too much. Recording the show just creates so much electromagnetic energy. It's not often that the power goes off in Hanoi. I'm currently in Hanoi, Vietnam, and I feel like it's never gone off like this before. And I've lived in Hanoi for several months. So that's exciting. But we can keep going because we're on battery power. That's fine. Of course, every time I do one of these episodes, and it's very quiet now, how about that? Every time I do one of these episodes, I consult the raw photos that I shot of that day. And it jogs my memory of the little details so I can just share them with you. It was quite a place. The Kali Dakshineswar Temple was built in 1855, relatively young compared to a lot of the temples that you'll go to or see if you do go to India. But there's a lot of energy. And the thing is, this place is so holy. There are 12 little temples, probably more, but there are 12 normal little temples inside of the main temple, little shrines, I should say, dedicated to Shiva, which is Kali's, they say consort, I just say spouse. And Shiva, of course, is one of the major deities in Hinduism. But I didn't know anything about Kali, not very much. I read a little bit about her and her history. And many people call her the Dark Mother. She's a protector, but she's fierce, very fierce. And if you know any women in your life that are interested in Hinduism, they know about Kali. A lot of women love Kali and are very inspired by Kali. And there were many, and throughout history, there have been many devotees of Kali. And I was reading about it. I'm like, okay, she's pretty intense. She's got this dark energy about her, but she's a positive entity, but mysterious. Again, I am not a authority on Hinduism at all. I'm just going to share what my experience was. And the thing is, when you go into this temple, and it's pretty big, when you go into this temple area, you have to check a lot of stuff. You got to give them your shoes. You got to give them your backpack. You give them, I think you have to give them your phone. I put my phone in the backpack. I don't like doing that. They give you a number. An old man gives you a number, and then you go inside. One thing I did, and you know, it is what it is. I maybe I asked them, but one way or another, I smuggled in my Olympus point and shoot because I thought I'm probably never coming back here. I want to have some photos to commemorate this experience. And I took a photo, the first photo I took inside. And, you know, it's a big square. And along the edge of the square are the little shrines in a row. So you got like 8 in this photo. And inside each of the Shiva shrines is this otherworldly blue glow. It looks like a portal into another world. And I later on, after I had my Kali experience, which I'll get to in a minute, I poked my head into a couple of these, and they are lit up with LED lights. Indians are not afraid of mixing very modern elements with very old elements. They don't really have the same concept of, I hate to say it, they don't really have a concept of cheesiness like people in the West might. People in the West would be like, we shouldn't put this thing in here because it's a totally different era. The Indians don't worry about that, and sometimes the result is quite striking and amazing. Inside each of these shrines is a Shiva lingam, which is basically a metaphor of the male and female principle. You can look up Shiva lingam, but people will put offerings at these Shiva lingam, and they will pray inside the shrines. But the blue glow was pretty wild. And these are towers. Like the middle of it was this tower. It was almost had a cathedral-like quality to it. And I'm sure there's probably some inspiration there. But in the center is this cathedral-like square building with these towers on top of it. And it's just open. There's these archways, and you can just walk through the first floor. But before you get there, you have to wait in line. The square building is between 2 other buildings. And Kali there's a representation of Kali in the first one. So I get in this line, I'm like, this seems like the line to be in. And what do I know, right? I'm a Westerner. I don't know anything. I'm learning. I've only been in India for less than 3 weeks. I'm just a student. This was the attitude that I had. I'm a student. I want to learn. And I wait in line. Didn't take very long, like 5 minutes. And we turn, we get around this, and we go up the steps. I'm still outside, by the way. And then we go into the temple, and there's an area for offerings, sort of at chest level. And I turn, and I see this figure with a black face, clothed in golden robes, a lot of lights in this chamber inside of the building. I'm only, I don't know, I'm like 4 or 5 meters away, 20 feet away. And I swear to God, this thing was looking back at me. You know that feeling where you lock eyes with someone and there is an energy there, especially if they have an emotion directed at you, any emotion, just any charged emotion. It was like that. And I caught my breath. I was like, what is happening right now? Like there's supposed to be just an idol in here. And this thing has, like, it might sound, I don't know, to the Westerners, it might sound weird. To Indians, they're like, yeah, that's normal. I'm sure the Indians listening to this are like, yeah, okay. Or the Nepalis. Like, that's normal, man. But to me, this was the first time that anything like this had happened to me in a temple. And I just felt kind of stared down by this deity. It was very intense, and I looked away. I was like, is she? It almost felt like she was. It sounds so funny to say now, but it felt like she was looking into my soul. You know, it felt like she was, and she. It wasn't negative, right? I didn't feel like I was in danger. I just felt like that was just her energy. That was just her mood at the time, of very fiery, very like maybe vague, I hate to say, like vague interest of like, why is this foreigner in my temple? Like, what are you doing looking at me? You don't even have a context for me. I don't know. Maybe that's just a story I'm telling myself, but I was trying to make sense of this looking at this thing, you know, because it was painted, right? The face was painted, but I swear to God, like this thing had some energy in it. Now, we could talk about how that works in another episode if you want, how maybe a spirit can possess a painting. Why not? I don't know. But it was very striking, and they gave me two little, I don't know what they were called actually. They were like these little wheat snacks, and I didn't know what to do with them. I hadn't read the manual, so I put them in my pocket, and I sort of just wandered around. Oh, the power's back. Oh, that's nice. I wandered around. It was Kali. Kali made the power go out. I wandered around. I'm in a bit of a stupor almost at this point. It's just like, gosh, that was a strange experience. It was a strange experience. And I wandered over to the central building that didn't really have any doors. There were 4 arches along each of the sides of the building, each of the cardinal directions. So I wandered over around into under one of the arches, and I saw in the first floor, and I think you could only reach the first floor. I think the second floor was really difficult to get to. And I noticed that people are lining up, that there is a perfect angle where if you stand in the center of this building, you could get a perfect view of Kali's altar. You can still see Kali. If you sit or stand in the center of this building, you can have a direct line of sight to see Kali in the distance. So people would line up and they would pray, and they would put their hands together and they would look at Kali and close their eyes, and they would pray and they would bow and they would say things that I couldn't hear or understand. And they would take turns. And that made sense to me, but it was also very interesting to watch for a minute. And I didn't feel like I had anything else. I didn't feel qualified or knowledgeable enough to say anything to Kali, really, except thanks for letting me experience this very charged place. Across the way around this time, I saw another Westerner, the only other Caucasian in what felt like the entire town. And I said, "Hey, where are you from?" Because there was a moment where he was walking across and he seemed very open. His body language was open. And he said, "Oh, I'm from Germany, and this is such an interesting place." I said, "Yeah, it's very, very unique. It's kind of intense." And he was traveling solo, but was about to meet up with some people in a couple days. And he was just, I think from the conversation I remember, he felt a bit like a fish out of water, just like I did. We kind of agreed that it was good. It was so good to to do our best to sort of understand the history of this place. So after being there, and I think that was I barefoot? No. I definitely was. You were required to leave your shoes behind, which is very normal in India, in many places. So I was walking around with socks, and many people were barefoot, of course. And it was starting to get dark, and I wandered in and looked at one of the other Shiva shrines, and was just struck by the energy in there. But I didn't take a picture. There was someone in there praying, and it didn't feel right. So I wandered back around to the exit and got in line to get my shoes back. I think I even had to pay. I think it was a very small amount of money. It was like $1. And I pull out my number from my pocket and give my number to the guy. And he goes around. He finds my shoes. I have a photo of my waterproof bag, my waterproof backpack on the shelf. This mustached guy. I wander around the grounds. Now it's very dark. And I realize that there are actually stalls where you can buy blessings. You can buy everything. Like the outside of the temple is very much a business venture, unfortunately. And they have all these stalls where people sell different little foods and different little things that I didn't have categories of reason for, honestly. Like, okay, there were shawls. Okay, I get that. But there were like yellow foods and different things and odd things and things that I didn't understand. Weird hats. I didn't know. Fans. Okay, that makes sense. It wasn't quite hot yet, though. It was still January, so it was pretty comfortable. I think the high temperature would have been 22 Celsius, 25 Celsius, maybe 80 degrees Fahrenheit during the day. That's why I really like going to India in January. Actually, it's pretty manageable. It's not cold, it's not hot. So I was sort of just wandering around taking in the energy at this point as the last light left the sky. I have a photo of the towers of that central building I mentioned earlier being hit with some of the light from another source. I don't even know where the light source is coming from, but it's sort of this haunting kind of energy. Of course, before I forget, I ought to mention that all of these photos are shared with people who support the show on Patreon, and it helps keep the show going. Now, if you join, I think, it's $10 a month. When you join at $10 a month, you get thousands of photos at this point. You have the whole rich backlog of all the after shows, and there are a lot of after shows, a lot of behind-the-scenes interviews that I've done, and all the photos that go with all of the... We were almost at 100 episodes of this show now, which is pretty crazy. And I go in and I actually color correct them and really make them, professional for the most part. And most of these photos are shot in RAW, so I'm able to bring out more detail. It's not just a cheap JPEG, I really put a lot of work into these. So I get out of the temple and I get back on the escalator, and these kids are just staring at me, these two girls dressed in pink. It's one of the funny little moments in this photo set for this week. And they probably think, I don't know what they're thinking. They're probably thinking like, why is this white guy in our temple? This is so strange. And this is something to keep in mind too, that if you go to India, and I hope that you do, because there are such lovely people and such rich history. When you go to India, you will meet people who are excited to practice their English and or have never had a conversation with a Westerner before. There are still people in India who have never had a conversation with someone from the United States or someone from Great Britain or someone from Australia or someone from Canada. It is still exciting for especially younger people, right, that haven't had the chance to travel or may never be able to afford to travel. Many Indians will never be able to afford to leave India. That's just the economic reality. So it can be very entertaining and interesting. They're very curious for them to, and this is somewhat true in Indonesia as well. Like they're excited. Usually they're quite excited to be like, hello, and practice their English and to be like, where are you from? And it's honestly, if you're a foreigner, especially if you're a Westerner, please be thoughtful about that. Please be thoughtful about that. You might be the only impression that person ever has of the country you're coming from. You will be the file card in their mind for Canada or Florida or Alaska. You'll be the only person they've ever met from that place. That is very, very possible. So if you want to represent the part of your world well, I suggest to be thoughtful about that. I know when you're adjusting to a new country, it's easy to get overwhelmed and get confused or to get frustrated. I see foreigners get frustrated and they step in a puddle or whatever, or they don't know where they are, but a lot of people, the majority of people, I will say this, that you run into, not all of them, of course, they genuinely they're happy to point you in the right direction. They're happy to give you a suggestion of where to find something edible, So just keep that in mind. I also want to talk a little bit about the following day where I got back to my couchsurfing host's place. I got up to this little village, and they owned the whole building actually, which is sort of common because they owned a school in the first floor. And they really wanted me to speak to some of the students. I think I talked about this in a previous episode, but I ended up teaching some people in their early 20s and answering English questions. And it was very fun. We just did it one night, but it was really great. It was a really beautiful way to give back. I had a big, dry erase board and their English was already pretty functional, but every language has its quirks. And one of the things I would do every day was I would go to the roof. This is one of the cool things about most, even South Asian buildings, is they have roof access. And I think it's because it doesn't snow in these places, so they don't need to engineer the buildings to withstand the weight of snow. So from the roof, I actually have a very, very silly photo of a plastic chair with the top broken off, just sitting on the roof, and the view of it's a vibe. It's a vibe. And additionally, the very fancy rug that ended up being my, how do I say this? Kind of the fitted sheet over the cushions that I was sleeping on. And if you want to hear about that, you can go to an episode, and it's 2 or 3 episodes ago, where I talk about my first day in India and how we kind of had to build a bed for me to stay in and just used cushions and pieces of things around. But the rug itself was very nice. I don't know if it was a Turkish rug or something. And it's such an emblematic, this photo is so emblematic. I have a chapati, which is kind of like a tortilla, but better with seasoned potato. And I got to tell you, I still miss the chapati and the sabji. The sabji is like the vegetable dip. It's got different vegetables in it. And they'll put eggplant. They'll put a lot of good stuff. Broccoli, seasoned potato. And if it's not already clear, Indians are masters at spice. They've had thousands of years to figure out the best combinations of spice. And it is a science. And you've got to experience it for yourself. They literally combine spices to make it easier for your body to digest what you're eating. There are enzymes and catalysts and pH balancers in different spices that help you break down what you're eating. And you feel good. That's the thing, is when you finished a meal, if you haven't overeaten, if you've just finished, you're going to feel really good. They know what they're doing. By the way, my couchsurfing hosts, they were just, the wife was just making this for me. And I felt a bit conflicted because she couldn't speak any English. And sometimes she would give me too much food. And I'd be like, oh, I didn't want to offend her. And there was a lesson in that too. And I don't know if I mentioned it. I guess I'll mention it now in case I didn't mention it in the past, was that's very important to listen to your body. This is going to sound probably really obvious, but it's better to risk offending someone than to get food poisoning. And me, spending a lot of time in the Midwest, it's a very people-pleasy kind of culture. It's a very overly friendly kind of culture, which has its good sides. But we really don't like offending people. And I did not have good boundaries with the food they were giving me. I ate too much. That was a factor. And I ended up throwing off my digestion for like 4 or 5 days. And I paid for it. And there was probably something else. There was probably another factor too. But I know that if I had listened to my body more, and if I hadn't worried about offending this lovely woman, if I had just said, Nahin Dhanyavad. Nahin means no. Dhanyavad means thank you. If I said Nahin Dhanyavad, and if I had spent a little more time with Google Translate, which I wasn't as comfortable with at that time, I could have avoided myself some suffering. But as life often goes, we often have to experience some suffering before we get the lesson. And that's definitely been true for me about 70 trillion times. But that's life, it's life. Around this time, the guru fixing my computer, not an actual spiritual guru, unfortunately. If he had been, he probably would have been able to just put his hand on the RAM chips and say, Om Mani Padme Hum, and it would probably fix my computer. He was a tech guru. Around this time, he sent me a photo, and I think I'm going to include this photo too because it's interesting, of the RAM, and to indicate that he was making progress on my MacBook. I was like, okay, and I was still waiting. And we'll see what happens with that next time on Wanderers. We'll see how that resolves. It's entertaining. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. And I want you to know that I am responsive to feedback. I love your comments. I love talking about India, to be honest. Recently, here in Hanoi, I've met some cool Indians. And it makes me nostalgic. I don't know when I'm going to go back, but it will happen. There's so much more that I'm going to share with you about India, how I was inspired by my time in India, how I was changed in a positive way, and why I took a 25-hour train ride across India. We're going to get to that in good time and all the fun stuff along with that, and how I dealt with some challenges along in that 25 hours as well, and an adventure that ended up spanning over 4 months across India. I even crossed paths with a very lovely woman that I will share some things about in the public feed. If you are interested, if you are new to this show, I would recommend you start with the first India episode that came out about 3 or 4 episodes before this one. It's entitled something like First Day in India. And if you want to hear about Nepal, you can listen to the 10 or so episodes before that. I shared a lot about my time in Nepal, which is also an amazing country. I was very inspired by that too. But I'm looking forward to sharing more about India with you soon. And if you do want to support the show, it does mean so much to me if you just subscribe to this, whatever platform you're on, hitting the subscribe button. Make sure you don't lose access or forget about any of the amazing episodes that are coming up. And if you really want to be my best friend, you can join my Patreon, patreon.com/Hello Crusoe. The word hello, Crusoe, like Robinson Crusoe, because I'm basically a character out of a book at this point. And there are several levels there that you can peruse. But at $10 a month, you get a lot. But even at $5 a month, you get access to my nonfiction Hawaii adventure, which is kind of like the prelude to all of this. It's the prelude to these global travels. My years in Hawaii and going through a Vipassana meditation and living off-grid, mostly off-grid, I tell that in a 25-hour, 3-volume audiobook. And you get access to all of that for $5 a month. And you can cancel at any time. So these are some options available to you. Or you can just subscribe and listen to this for free. I just appreciate anything you can do. If you like this show, anything you do is appreciated. I'll see you next time. Aloha.